Well, wouldn't it be awesome if our internal users or staff or maybe external contractors or third-party teams didn't have the ability to say that they didn't know or I didn't do that? Well, my friends, let me welcome you to repudiation. And that's exactly what repudiation is. It's the ability to say you didn't do something, right? Well, I didn't do that. I didn't log in at 8:55. I logged in at 8 a.m., right? Now, if we add the component on non-repudiation and we tie that together, basically it allows us to say, well, you don't have the ability to deny it, or you don't have the ability to say that you didn't do something. Now, this comes in many forms, and the first sort of part is, if we look at this, it's a form of authentication, right? And the second part of that is audit. We have now a form of authentication. We'll talk about how we use the PKI part of that. So you've got your symmetric keys, you got your asymmetric keys, and how they play into this, because you can use those in forms of digital signage, right? So let's talk about it over here as maybe a use case. So let's say that we've got, I can't draw, so I'm just going to write Sally over here, and then Sally wants to communicate, with maybe her HR team, and she wants to send an email out to them, right? And then maybe her HR team is located somewhere else. There's obviously a VPN here, and they're communicating over a connection of some sort. So Sally can do this in a couple of ways. Obviously, through email is a very common form. She can take a private key. She can sign the digital certificate of that email exchange. So she'll sign that with a digital cert. As the email goes out to HR, they'll obviously use the same key if they're using if they're using a certain form of encryption in part of, if we're talking about symmetric key encryption or asymmetric, using the different parts of the keys. In this example, I'm just going to keep it very simple. Sally will take a private key. She'll sign her email off with that digital cert. And then when HR receive it, let's say they're using the same key in this example, so the same shared key, the HR team or the HR person on the receiving end can then take that message, use the same key to decrypt it, and then they can view the clear text message that says, whatever it says. So in this form, that we can keep Sally as a form of, authentication that she did, validate and obviously electronically sign off on this email. It was sent or traversed across, a 9 channel. So maybe it was, a timestamp here that we can enter. And then obviously the receiving end, that's another timestamp here of when it was received, things like that. So it becomes a bit of a process around an audit, it's authentication, and then Sally doesn't have the form to say, well, I didn't send that email out, when she is the only person with that shared key. Now, obviously that organization must have a shared repository with, public keys and stuff like that, where we can get and obviously view them. But ultimately it does fall down into, Sally in this example cannot say that she maybe didn't send this email out to a competitor, and now I can write a competitor over here, competitor 1, and she's maybe sending them information that she's not authorized to send out, for example, right? So as she goes out, if there's emails or a document or a file, if it's a document or another file, she will have this as a digital cert. So she will sign up on those digitally. And then that's a form now of authentication, obviously auditing purposes. So when we tie these into the authenticity across the files, obviously the public key infrastructure helps us with that authentication part. So the PKI is the tool set that issues public and private keys. The owners of those private keys are obviously sensitive, it's confidential, it's secure, and it's proof that you own that private key. Therefore, you're the only one that can sign off or digitally sign off of that email or of that file. So another example we can use that is the bank. So let's say we go to a banking provider and we want to maybe deposit, $1 million, right? And wouldn't that be awesome to deposit $1 million into a bank account? So I'm sure for any of you that know that, you will need to go into the bank and obviously, validate who you are, right? You have to give them your ID, ID, they'll do a check, They'll look at your photo. They'll ask you questions, things like that. So they need to validate who you are. And then obviously from there, once you validate that, they'll put a timestamp around, your money was deposited. James deposited, $1 million at 3 p.m. or whatever that example is, right? So now that has that order process, they've gone through the authentication process, they've successfully authenticated who you are, either if it might be biometrics in that example, they might ask you to put your thumb down and validate that, we've got a record of your authentication of that sort. But ultimately it comes down to the validity. It becomes now that part of that process audit. So hopefully that clears out a little bit about non-repudiation if you're unclear of what that term is. Again, if you'd like to view more around the PKI infrastructure, we do talk about VPNs and the public key infrastructure and how that all sort of works as well. I hope you found this video informative, and I'll catch you on the next video.